webinar, more detail on our level being 9 mastery, more detail on our level being 9 mastery program. Wow! Mastery program. Level being 9 mastery.
Richard Mathias, welcome to You Learn Naturally Radio. Thank you for spending some time with me. You are a Caribbean beekeeper, a very well-connected Caribbean beekeeper, connected to many beekeeping organizations across the region. So I'm really very pleased to welcome you to our Science Week program, our British Science Week program on the science of honeybee keeping. Please introduce yourself and share with us a little of your story, how you've come to be being a beekeeper in the Caribbean. And you have agreed to give us a very nice presentation on your recent congress. You've had a congress of all your associations. So, Richard, welcome to You Learn Naturally Radio. Thank you.
Morning, my brother. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you guys in the UK. As you could probably notice from my tone of my voice and my dialect, I'm originally a Londoner, South Londoner myself, but I'm going back to warmer pastures, greener pastures, hopefully. So it's it's in the, not to brag, it's in the 80s here Fahrenheit, so we're good. So it's nice and warm. My name is Richard Mathias.
Do you want to tell us where you are? You've teased us. You've teased us very nicely. Do you want to tell us where you are?
Sorry, I'm in the Helen of the West, wonderful and beautiful St. Lucia.
Wow.
The only country in the world named after a woman. So I've got to be here. I'm in St. Lucia in the Caribbean. Okay. All right. So my name is Richard Mathias. I've been a beekeeper for probably a little over 12 or 13 years. I'm based, as I said, in St. Lucia. I am the president of the Ionola Apiculture Collective, and I'm also the secretary of the Association of Caribbean Beekeeping Organisations, which is the umbrella body that looks after the interests of all beekeepers in the English-speaking Caribbean. What else do you wanna?
Well, that says a lot. So I'll let our audience will digest that. But clearly, you're well connected, and I'm really very pleased to speak to you. Just the initial conversation we had before we started this really showed me a great breadth of your work and your organization's work. And we're just going to touch on basically one element that gives a glimpse into the world that you have as a leader in the organization of beekeepers across the Caribbean. So I think you said a lot, and we can unpack some of the backstory as we travel through your presentation.
Okay. Well, this morning I'm going to try and touch a little bit on, quite a large portion of my time. I'm going to touch on the concluded Caribbean Beekeepers Congress that happened in November of 2020. Despite being in the middle of COVID, we were able to hold our first virtual Caribbean Beekeepers Congress. This is the 10th one. The Association of Caribbean Beekeepers has been in existence for 20 years, so it was a significant milestone to have the Congress. Even though it was virtual, it was still a milestone. We had a great participation from across the region, and we had also a lot of international presenters. What I'm probably going to touch base with you this morning, I will start with a few of our technical presentations. We'll leave this one from Trinidad first. This one from Trinidad to be our last presentation, as it's a video presentation, and we will touch on some of the other presentations prior to that one. So the first one we're going to take a look at is quite an interesting one. It was a presentation done by the University of West Indies St. Augustine campus in Trinidad and Tobago, and it's all about honey and the botanical properties of honey, and testing honey, and what we should be looking for as beekeepers from a scientific perspective. So this was done by the Department of Life Sciences at the University of West Indies St. Augustine campus. Before I proceed, I just want to spare a special thanks to our main sponsor of that event. That was the Global Environmental Facility, GEF SGP UNDP, the St. Lucia office, Mr. Giles Romulus. They were instrumental in assisting us in executing this venture, and they provided a lot of the financing for our website, for videography, and all the different things that we did during that time. So special thanks for Jeff SGP, UNDP for their assistance in this project. So let's push ahead. This is a great presentation because it talks about defining honey, and not just about, people just think of honey that it's just this stuff that ends up in a bottle. There's a lot more to honey than that. So they first talk about there are two types of honey. There's blossom honey, which we all know that is produced from the nectar of plants and includes multifloral and unifloral types. So when we speak about multifloral, we speak that it's the honey or the nectar collected from many flowering plants. And unifloral is when it's just from a singular plant source. So for instance, if you've got an almond estate, then that will be a unifloral, just one single type of floral bouquet. So there's just, for miles and miles and miles, there'll just be one type of plant flowering. So, which is nice if you, from a marketing perspective, but from a beekeeping or from the bees' perspective, it might not be such a good thing, because the bees or protein mix they require, because you just get one single source of nectar. So that can be to the detriment of the bees in the long run. But you as a marketer, you might like it. Yeah, I've got orange blossom honey, or I've got almond blossom honey. That sounds great from a marketing standpoint, but from the bees standpoint, it might not be such a good thing, because they need multiple sources of different nectar sources and pollen sources to survive.
Food diversity.
All right. Exactly. Perfect. You go hit the nail on the head. Food diversity. You can't survive on McDonald's or KFC all your life. You need some of the mum's home cooked food. You need some of grandma's cooked food. You need some of your own good cooked foods to have a balanced diet. You know, so you need to have a little bit of everything. All right. A honeydew is a product from excretions of plants. So there's some plants, such as, like, let's say the rubber tree, that it secretes a nectar that bees can feed on also. And now honeydew is not considered by the specialists in the field, the classic beekeeping authorities across the world, as honey. So if you've got your bees collecting, or there's a major source of honeydew, and your bees collect that, it's not considered to be honey. All right, so that's just to be technical. All right, so there are two types of nectar sources: honeydew, and there's blossom honey. So these two types of honeys. All right. So honey content and their properties. So you've got different sugars, predominantly fructose and glucose. You've got water, you've got carbohydrates, you've got organic acid, minerals, vitamins, and enzymes. And there's also solid particles derived from the honey collection. All right, and this graph here perfectly describes that. And you'll note that there are different colors, which they've also brought to your attention. So there are different colors of honey. So at different times of the year, you will get different colors of honey, because there'll be different types of nectar sources in flowers. So traditionally in the Caribbean, when you've got fruit trees in blossom, you'll get a very darker kind of honey. And if they're non-fruit trees, just flowering trees that will produce a seed for which will germinate into a younger tree, it'll be more of a flowery bouquet, and it'll be a very light in color. All right, but that's not always the case, but that's just a general rule of thumb. So during the course of the year, you will see your honey will transition from a very light color to a very dark color. All right, that doesn't mean the light colored honey is imperfect to the dark color honey. It just means that it's a different nectar source. Likewise, it will also affect the aroma and taste of the honey during the season. So the taste of the honey you get maybe at the beginning of the year will not be the same taste as the honey you get at the end of the year, because you've got different flowers are around, so you have a different unique taste. And that's one of the interesting things about honey in the Caribbean, that maybe in Europe and North America they just blend all different types of honey together and they mix it all up, and it has really no unique flavor unless you buy it from a traditional one of your small local beekeeper. So if you go to the supermarket, all the honey kind of virtually tastes the same. It never really tastes anything special as you buy a Manuka or a very high valued honey. Where in the Caribbean, our honeys are kind of more unique because we're more smaller artisans. So you could get these different tastes throughout the year, and it makes our product a little more unique. All right, so that's what they're speaking to in this slide. I don't want to spend too much time on this.
No, it's okay. I mean, what you're doing now, as I was saying to you before, I'm very happy for you to give a teaser to each paper, because I think that our audience should spend the time to go and look at the website, because it's a huge resource of information, and just time to read these things properly. So I really, as wonderful as it would be for you to read through the whole thing, I'm happy for you to just give a hint to it and let them let us do our own homework. It's very interesting. Already you've said some fascinating things. So it's great.
All right, so let me just wrap up. So this paper basically will identify what they did in their experiments, and what they basically did in their experiments, they looked at different properties of the honey. So that basically they wanted to determine the pollen content of the honey samples. Now, why would you say, well, why would you want to know what the pollen content is, or what's so special about the pollen? But if you can identify the pollen that's in the honey, it will tell you exactly specifically what trees your bees were visiting. And it would, so that, because you might be thinking, there's a whole bunch of this kind of trees in my area. And then when you do the analysis, your bees are even looking at that tree. They're bypassing that tree and they're going to another tree. So then you now may decide to, if you want to plant more of that particular tree. So, maybe a few years from now, as you realize that that's the tree that the bees are really actually going to, as opposed to the one you thought. One of the also interesting points you may want to look at is you want to look at the antioxidant power. The antioxidant power is the total antioxidant content. This speaks to the medicinal properties of the honey and how well it's able to treat diseases and bacteria. So if you could start looking at these different aspects of the honeys, you'll now be able to develop a better profile. So if you could link the pollen, you would know the source, and then if you saw that it had a high antioxidant content, then you would say, we need to plant more of that tree to give our honey more of that antioxidant property. Right? So the research they did was quite interesting, and they, Trinidad and Tobago is a twin island republic, so there's some differences in the floral content in Tobago as opposed to Trinidad, but it's generally by and large the same. And it's a really nice presentation, and they look into the pollens, and they look at the distribution of different trees in the region, and they do a nice example of what the pollen analysis determines the botanical and geographical origin of the honey. And that's an interesting point as well, because you've got a lot of fake honey across the world. So if you've got a botanical and geographical analysis of your honey, any honey that say comes in, if the average beekeeper in your country sells a bottle of honey for $10, and all of a sudden you see a bottle of honey coming into your market selling for $3, how is that possible? So you could do the botanical and geographical analysis of that $3 bottle of honey and say, well, we just tested this honey and it's sugar syrup, and it doesn't show any of the botanical properties of any honey produced in whatever island in the Caribbean form. So this is not real honey, it's fake honey that came from somewhere else in the world, so dump it.
That's right.
So
what you're saying there is interesting to me. And in a previous podcast, we had Anthony Richards. He was speaking about how award-winning honey comes from the Caribbean. So it's very. Some people may not appreciate that you are rightfully defending the quality of the region by knowing by fact of science that you can prove authenticity.
Exactly. Exactly, and that's why a lot of science is very important in anything that we do today. The STEM subjects are very important, and it's important that the young people gravitate to these areas, because it may not be very obvious careers, or maybe not very obvious career paths. I'm going to do chemistry, I'm going to do biology, but what am I going to end up being if I just do biology at school? But doing biology and doing chemistry, it allows you to go into fields like this and be able to, food is an important part of our daily lives. And if chemistry and biology has a great part to do with food, so if you're in those fields, it's not just, well, I'm going to do some kind of crazy science, or I'm going to do something to do with in a zoo or something like that. There's a lot of practical fields or practical uses of that knowledge in everyday life. So they're very important fields. And I've been a long proponent of trying to get kids that are going into chemistry and biology to zoom in a little bit on bees, because bees are a little more complicated than your general livestock fields. They're more interesting because bees are biological markers. They're very important. Tells you what's happening in the ecosystem, tells you what's happening around you. Right. So from just looking at the honey that the bees produce, I can tell you what trees are are present in a specific area. So and that's all done through science. So it's very important that we look at the science. But this is a great paper, and they talk about how to do pollen analysis and the characterizations and how to identify pollen. And they give examples of the different trees and how to prepare the samples, so you have it on record and so forth. So, and they give the whole process of extracting the pollen and what it is. So this is a really great presentation done by the University of West Indies, and I was really happy to see they've really zoomed in on honey production and apiculture in the last few years, and they've really been able to produce a quality paper of this nature. So, and it's available. You can look at it. It's free of charge. ACBOonline.com, ACBOonline.com. You can pick up this presentation.
It is great. So before you go to the next one, just to tag into what you've just presented,
Sure.
I'm very pleased to see that. I like in our podcasts to give a little sense of why we're doing the podcast, and I don't always do it at the beginning. I prefer to do it as we're flowing. So this is a good point. What you've just presented is an excellent thing for our cadets. We have a program called Level Being 9, which is about bringing advanced learning to younger children so that they can absorb it in a natural way in a shorter time. And this being able to associate with Yui, because you're kindly sharing this level of very important material, and the clarity of how you've done it, or how it's been done, is really, really great. It gives us a good direction to align. And obviously most of our cadets are coming through either parents of African continental heritage or African Caribbean heritage or African heritage from Europe. And many of our cadets are like this. Some are differently, but that cultural value and that sense of regional value, to the degree that you would defend the quality, that's excellence. Level 9 is, in the UK system, is the standard of excellence. It's the highest excellence. So we should, in order to achieve that, our cadets need to be working on areas where excellence is being demonstrated. So it's a perfect complement. And I know there's a lot of papers to go through, but I just wanted to stop and sort of connect this point. This is the very reason why we're having a science of beekeeping program. Yeah, thank you.
And there's so much science in beekeeping, man. We just, I mean, we probably need a whole 10 podcasts to get through the science.
I see that. I mean, each paper I can see. When I saw the papers, when I came across that, I'm like, yeah, each one of these is a thing in itself. We could just talk about that for one show. But I'm very glad that you've agreed to give us a teaser to the whole thing. And what that will do, certainly for our cadets program, we will go through each paper in detail. That definitely will do that. But I'm hoping that our audience, the broader community, will see the interest.
Yeah, probably what we can do is that we can, if there's any particular papers of great interest, especially one from the UWI, we could organize a session with the scientists, with the team that actually put the paper together. I'm sure they would love to speak to you guys in the UK and get the message across to you guys.
Fantastic.
If you want to do that.
We'd love, honored to do that. Absolutely honored to do that. Black Open University and University of the West Indies collaboration. Fantastic.
There you go. Yeah, there you go, man. So we can't do Science Month or Science Week. It has to be a year of science, man.
Well, this is it. This is the whole thing.
A year of research and innovation, man.
Well, you see, this
don't never finish, man.
That's right. This is the thing. I tried to squeeze our program into the British Science Week, and we just burst the sides of it. We've done so much in the Science Week, and now there's still so much more to do. So we've extended ourselves into more domain, more time.
Here's the trick, right?
Tell me.
The English folk just tell you, yeah, man, it's Science Week. But Science Week never finished for them. It never begins. Science is always happening. So
you're right.
Science is life. Science is life, man. All right.
That's right.
If you're looking down to your water treatment and the fresh water systems and your environment and the air you breathe, there's a science behind everything. And then if you start looking at the human body as a whole new, so science never finished, man. Science is a lifetime subject. Science is something that you should try to dedicate a week in every month to science, and then we will be on the right track, man.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
All right. So let's move on. Soccer. This is something that I had a personal interest in myself and two colleagues. Dr. Kurt Prosper and Dr. Shada Mahabir. We were working on a project, and we still have an ongoing project with technology-supported apiculture. As I spoke to you about, we're working on we've developed a mobile app, and we also use remote hive monitoring systems in our beehives.
Before you go into this, I'm very pleased to see this. And when you touched on it in our preparation conversation, but I didn't explain to you that we've just done a podcast with a chap called Richard Tozer, who's built a similar kind of hive monitoring setup using Raspberry Pi And all of that level of maker technology, this is the kind of thing we engage our cadets with. So we have even like that connects to a different project where we're using Arduino boards and things like this. So I'm so very pleased to see that you've done this. So we have another reference to how to use technology to monitor bee hive developments. Please tell us more about this.
Sure. Okay. So there's a few main issues or challenges that beekeepers face, not just in the Caribbean but around the world. Poor hive management, pests and diseases, loss of foraging areas, climate change, and the productivity of the queen. So how do you monitor these things, and how do you keep track of these things? Because as a commercial beekeeper, I have hundreds of hives, and how do I keep all of this in my head? Or do I keep it row by row of bees? Like, even if I put numbers on all the hives, I'll be there with a pad and a piece of paper writing down information forever. And invariably the pad and the piece of paper gets lost, or it gets abandoned, and you're just going by visuals and what you remember. So first of all, we worked with a company called Arnia. They're based up in Durham. Is it Durham? Yeah, Durham in the north of England. And they produce a hive monitoring system. And the picture on your right is basically a gateway system, the weather gauge system, and this is so this is the gateway system, and it normally has 3 more sensors, and the sensors will capture moisture, humidity, temperature, and the acoustics of the hive. So from measuring these three variables, we're able to tell a lot of information, which I'll go on in a little bit of this in the presentation. And the second thing we're working with an Indian company called Leopard Tech Labs. And so this is part of a South-South collaboration between the Caribbean and India. So you see, beekeeping brings people transatlantic connections.
That's right. I like that.
So we working with them, and we've produced in collaboration an app called HiveKeep. The name may change to Caribbean for the Caribbean version of it, but it was initially brainchild. It was called HiveKeep. And what that does, it allows you to capture data such as weather conditions, forage you observe, and record events that happen within your hive. So if you requeen it, if you give your hive any nutrition, or if you treat your hive for any kinds of mites or pests and diseases you may see in the hive, you've got a record on your Android app on your phone, and that will capture all that information for you over time. You can capture weather information, wind speed, temperature, and so forth. And you can do your hive examinations. If you treat for pests and disease, you can make a record of it. How much honey you harvest. If you do any feeding for your bees, you can make a recollection. So in the long run, well, I spent so much money on feed for the year. Did I make a profit or did I lose? And if you have to requeen that particular colony, you can record it, and it's all got a QR code. Each hive box has a QR code on it, and so you could really keep that information nice and neat in a phone app, because we've all got a cell phone. That's the equivalent to a Bible now. We used to walk around with our little Bible, our little New Testament in our pockets. Now everything we've got our phone in our pockets, and that gives us our whole world in our pockets. So that's what the hive eat, and this is something, the questions you'll get in. You can capture some of the data you can capture with your hive examinations and so forth. And we talk about some of the advantages and the disadvantages. I mean, you can provide beekeepers with a powerful tool to keep detailed records of their hive inspections, and they can photograph anomalies. We've got a very strong back-end support system as an administrative panel, so you can have a supervisor. So if you've got a group of young beekeepers that are all running this app, you can have a supervisor logging into all the information, and he can see the pictures that they take, and he can zip them an email and say, well, do this, do that, X, Y, Z. So you can give them that long-range technical support to a wide group of people by them being able to use this app. Right? But as one of the advantages, is 100% dependent on the beekeeper uploading the information. Right? But it's a good and a bad thing, because if I'm the supervisor and I can go in and say, well, John Doe hasn't uploaded the information for 3 weeks. Let me reach out to John Doe and see if he's okay. And John Doe might be in hospital and nobody knows, so we can dispatch someone to look after his bees for him. Or something could have happened, but at least there is a third set of eyes looking at what's going on. And it's great. I've worked on a lot of funded projects where, there might be I might be a trainer or a mentor working under a project, and I may have trained 20 or 30 people in beekeeping, and they get a couple of free hives and the equipment and everything, and then you never see them again until the program's finished. But at least if they've got an app like this, it allows the project administrators to check in and see what's happening with these hives and these beekeepers beyond the life of the project. So at least it gives that level of community. I think we spoke about that before. Community is what's important in order for things to grow and develop and mature. So this is one thing we've been working on, and it's been a great plus for us. Hive monitors that we got from Arnia are a slightly different project. This is a map of St. Lucia, you can see here. So we had positioned 40 monitors at different points of the island, and we were capturing information. So this is basically what a hive monitor looks like. It's a scale at the bottom, and it's got a lot of wires that go inside of it. And this is uploaded, and it takes hourly information and uploads it to the cloud. So you've got all this information: hive temperature, humidity, brood temperature, and flight activity. So we captured this data over, and this is what the interface looks like. So you're going to see some nice graphs like this. It's pretty nice GUI. And, this gives you an idea of what the temperature, brood, the average you got. So you can see this here is probably the weight, I think. Yeah, so this bottom one, the bottom here is the weight. So you would see that over time, the weight increased of the hive over time. So you could see when there was a flow going on, and you could see how much honey was coming in per day. If you want to zoom in, and you could see, okay, it allows you that level of flexibility. Do I need to put more boxes on top of the hive because I think it's going to run out of space? So you can have that level of visuality. So if you've got hives way in the south of the island, as I have, and I've got this system in place. So I can say, okay, when I'm going down to the south of the island, I can pack the Jeep with enough extra additional equipment so that I can, that I can do the job properly. I have to make more than one trip. But that's by information. So some of the data that, from looking at the data we collected, we can see there's seasonal differences in hive temperature and humidity as the seasons change. So as you can see, in the wet season, the humidity is quite high on average, and in the dry season, the humidity changes quite low. So you can see as the seasons change, there is the hive itself changes as well. It's adapting to its surroundings, and it's looking at different things. So that's looking at some of the general things. We found that our brood temperature ranges between 32.8 to 36.3 Celsius, with an optimum value at 34.5. These are pretty similar to global figures, because the global figures are 32.8 to 36.1. And that's the average global figure. So we're in the Caribbean. Our average temperature is probably around about 27, 28 degrees Celsius. All right. But it doesn't matter where you are in the world. The internal temperature of a beehive is maintained at this same rate wherever you are in the world, somewhere between 32 to 36 degrees Celsius. Doesn't matter where you are. It could be in the coldest country or it could be in the hottest country. The bees are maintaining that temperature. So it was not a new finding, but it was just interesting to prove that that's factually correct.
Yeah, it is interesting.
This temperature is maintained. Humidity ranges, our average humidity between 40% to 65%, and average humidity across the world is between 40 to 80%. So once again, we know that it doesn't matter where the bees are. Apis mellifera, the western honeybee, originated in Europe, all right? But it doesn't matter where you put them in the world, they'll function as set parameters. All right, so I mean, these are some of the basic things that we've learned, and as time goes on, we're using the equipment to monitor more things and to give us more information so we can get more feedback. And with the mobile app, we're hoping to integrate both the remote hive monitors to the mobile app to make it even more powerful tool. And we think over time, once we capture this information over the years, the data that we're logging, and we expand this data logging program to other Caribbean islands, over maybe 5 or 6 years from now, we will see some very serious, as the environment changes, as global warming or the lack of global warming happens, or whatever happens, we will have a record of exactly what happened in chronological order.
Fantastic.
So we'll be able to tell the Caribbean story as to climate change and the bees.
Fantastic.
We will have a chronological record of it. So that's something that we are doing, and we're expanding this project to the other islands in the Caribbean.
Before you go to the next one, I just have a couple of questions about that.
Sure.
How does the power supply work with the units?
Batteries, D batteries. We're looking at transferring it across to solar soon because the D batteries can be quite costly. But we're looking at changing either to a smaller lithium battery because there's an upgrade to the system which we're working on, or we'll convert the units to be in solar power because we've got sun 24 hours a day here. There's no need for us to buy.
Don't rub it in. Don't rub it in. Come on now. All right, we know. Send these. We know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Choice, man. The Caribbean belongs to all of us, man.
Yeah.
Sorry.
My other point, data sharing. How does that work? You've engaged with different agencies. You mentioned one in the UK, one in India, and how is the data shared in regard to this project and these apps? Is it, well, you tell me, how does it go?
Well, the project we're doing with the Indian guys, the guys from India, we're actually through JFSGP, we're now actually embarking on a partnership with Microsoft. I know you don't like these big guys, but we're embarking on a project with Microsoft, and we're actually migrating the data servers to Microsoft platform so that we can get access to AI technology to assist us add more features to our app.
Well, you touched into my third question there.
Necessary. So you have to make friends with you have to make allegiances with the corporate giants of some sort. You can't.
I hear you. I'm not arguing about that at this point in time. No, not at all. But you did touch into my next point, which is AI. I wondered about the AI angle. So you've expressed it. I see.
I can tell you what we want to do. I can tell you what we want to do. what we want to do with the AI aspect in the mobile app, we would like to add a feature that there's a couple of diseases that bees suffer from. One of the main one is Varroa destructor, which is a parasite that actually eats the fat body of the bees, and it can also transmit. It can be a host for a number of other viruses that affect the bees. So one of those Israeli cute paralysis virus, K-wing disease. There's a whole host of 15 different diseases that this one parasite can carry. So what we want to do is to be able to like just take a picture of a screen of a frame, and then get AI to run through the frame to see if it finds any varroa mites on the backs of the bees in the phoretic stage. And if it's able to do that, if it sees a significant quantity, then you know that you really need to treat that hive as a matter of urgency. Or if you see a lot of the bees with the K-wing disease, there's a problem in the hive. It needs deeper interest, deeper investigation. So there's certain things that we should be, if we using AI, if you take a picture of several frames of the bees, you should be able to capture some data that you as a human eye cannot really pick up. But using computer technology, AI, it could scan it, it could look at it intuitively, and it can give you back some results almost instantaneously. So these are the things that we wanted to incorporate into it. Then with the data, drops in temperature below a certain point can signify something is going on in the hive. So if you start bringing all this information together, AI can give you some very interesting results.
Yeah, I'm very aware of that. I've been keeping an eye on AI. We've started a project called Ecosystem Ma'at, and the agency behind this it's also AI, but we use the term, rather than artificial intelligence, as augmented intelligence. But the whole AI domain is a very important futurist concentration. All I would say, I know we've got quite a few things to go through. All I would say about this, in my opinion, is the importance of data sovereignty. Data is the big point.
Yes.
And it's great getting the technology that can harvest data and glean insights from the data. But then at some point in time, when the data becomes like Google or any of the others that are giant data barons, there can become conflicting interests. So as you've seen this, the world has seen the possibilities of that, and I think that those conflicting interests will start to show up in these new areas where AI is being applied, if it is not entered into in a mindful way. And especially because you are dealing with sovereign nations. You are a beekeeper that is part of connecting several sovereign nations in the Caribbean, and that's important. But anyway, let's not go down that road, because that's a whole thing in itself. But I know you're aware of these. I know you think these things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very valid and relevant point. But I always say this: it's like an idea in your head. If you've got an idea in your head and you leave it in your head, it's only of value to you. But if you take that idea and you share it, it becomes of value to everybody that comes in contact with that idea. And keeping ideas in your head you could die with it, and it's of no use to you. And there's the theory of equifinality. There's always somebody else thinking of the same thing that you're thinking of, and at some point they will always get to that point as you're at. It's how you manage that, idea, and you manage your relationships with people. So it's very important that we have all this sovereign nation information, and at the end of the day, the it's a singular project, so the data belongs, I would hope, to the project and the beekeepers involved in the project.
This is my critical question, but I'm not expecting an answer from you for that. But I know you must hold this concern, and I would hope very strongly that every stakeholder in the region has the clarity to value that thing properly.
Yes. Yes.
If this applies Pan-Africa across the globe, if people don't value that, then other agencies that do know the value will just take it and seal in the contracts and agreements that just dominate the thing. That's the nature of business.
But we're working with Jeff SGP. That's part they fall under United Nations, and the persons that we work with here, Mr. Giles Romulus, and other national coordinators in Trinidad, Dr. Shada Hamabe. These are people who have their country and their people at heart, and always looking to push forward the agenda of not just their individual countries, but the agenda of the Caribbean agenda. Excuse me. So everybody's very much focused on, let's come together and push forward as one people in the Caribbean, one mind, one people, one love. All right. So it's, without unity, none of us can move forward together. So there must be that unity.
Indeed.
I think the people who are the overseeing this project are all nationals of their respective countries. It's not like there's somebody from United Nations who doesn't have a relationship with any of these countries dictating the pace. This is like there's a national coordinator. This project, our regional project, this is a very interesting project. I'm going to segue across a little bit. It's a 7-island project: St. Kitts, Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, and it's a South-South project. So we're also collaborating with Samoa in the Pacific Ocean as well. So we're also we're working with beekeepers in Samoa, all the way from the Caribbean. So this is a project that is being driven out of St. Lucia in the Caribbean, but we're not just touching beekeepers in the Caribbean. We're also reaching out and touching our brothers in Samoa, right, in the South Pacific. So I mean, that's how far-reaching we are. We so it's not. So when you work with agencies, funding agencies such as Jeff SGP, you get the opportunity to really span across the length of the globe with your projects and upscale projects, because this project started in St. Lucia and we upscaled it to Trinidad, and then we scaled again to collaborate with some of our other sister countries. So this project is a three evolutions.
It's fantastic. It's a beautiful thing to see and hear about. So I'm very pleased. It's a great thing.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I mean, and I would love to see us touch base with brothers and sisters in the UK. And let's try and get a UK component, because there's a lot of funding in the UK for apiculture.
Well, for sure, we can be a link like this, and I look forward to demonstrating that and exploring that. Okay,
fantastic.
Let's move on, because you've got a lot to cover, and like I said, it's a serious thing. There's so much there, and you're right. We could be here for the day and talk about this thing.
Level being 9, more detail mastery. On our level being level 9, mastery program. Level being 9, mastery program. Wow! Mastery program. Level being 9, mastery.
All right. So let's hit quickly on, and this is a subject that is really close to my heart. This was a presentation done by Dr. Lena Dumper-Wolf out of Trinidad and Tobago. Her focus was on climate change and neotropical pollinators. So she's referring to the endemic species to the Caribbean, because remember, the Western honeybee, or Apis mellifera, the European honeybee, is not endemic to the Caribbean. It was brought to the Caribbean in the 1600s by colonizers. All right, so this is an alien species to the Caribbean. What you can see on the screen is what we call a stingless bee, and these are endemic to the Caribbean. Now, they don't produce as much honey as the Western honeybee. They're much smaller in size, but they're better designed for some of our endemic species in the Caribbean. And when we speak of pollinators in the Caribbean, we're not just speaking about, in this presentation, we're not just speaking about bees, we're speaking about hummingbirds, we're speaking about ants, we're speaking about moths, all kind of little creepy crawlies that actually do pollinate plants. So bees are just the most popular pollinators we are aware of, but there are many pollinators that are part of the whole ecosystem, and climate change probably will affect these guys, the endemic species, harder than the honeybees, because the honeybees are managed populations. So there's a guy like me, or somebody that looks like, well, maybe not look at it exactly like me, but somebody similar to me that's looking after these bees. So if there's a crisis or something happens, there's somebody else to do an intervention to resolve the problem. But these guys that are in the wild by themselves, there is nobody to help them. And these are very important part of our ecosystem. So Dr. Demble speaks about pollination, its value, and what it does, and explains a bit that we're in a global pollination crisis because we're losing our natural pollinators. All right, she's not only honeybees contribute to pollination, wild pollinators are more important. All right, and they're not the most effective pollinators. And in this graph here, she has a whole list of all the different pollinators and where they are, and their bees, their wasps, their flies, all kind of different things, and and their names. So there's a whole host of pollinators that you never even thought of.
Wow.
And what makes a good pollinator? And she went into all that, and she speaks to it, the characteristics, the body size, the physical characteristics, abiotic conditions, behavioral characteristics, landscape, habitat, socials. Are they social? Are they solitary? There's a whole dynamic. So, for instance, if you're working in a greenhouses, you can't work with honeybees because they need miles of space and miles of flowers to work with. So you may want, in a greenhouse, people work with bumblebees. Right, so they're much smaller and they're more efficient working in smaller spaces. So, I mean, this is a great scientific presentation. She speaks of pollinator decline, loss of habitat, and the importance of having a high pollinator biodiversity, because there are different pollinators for different types of plants. So if you focus too much on one type of pollinator, that pollinator is only specifically designed or only prefers to work with a certain grouping of flowers or species of plants. So what happens to the other species of plants that require pollination also? So if you lose your wild pollinators, these guys are going to fall by the wayside, and you're just going to have you're going to get into a monoculture or a monocrop culture of like, well, only these type of plants will survive because they're only the ones that either don't require pollination or there is something that is available to pollinate them. So you must have a wide diversity of pollinators to support your biodiversity, and that's why it's called biodiversity, because you need this many different mechanisms. So this is a great presentation on that, and so she looks at some of the things that affect our pollinators and so forth, and she looks at climate change also. So it's quite an interesting presentation. I would advise your cadets and other persons to take a look at this presentation because it's a great presentation. And if you wish, I could always ask Dr. Dembleworth to give a talk for you guys if you want to speak about the importance of pollinators.
You're very interested. We shall prepare for that, definitely.
All right. Let's move on. Okay, this is a great.
Before you go to the next one, just you don't need to go back to it, but just before you go into this.
This is done in Jamaica.
Sorry. Before you go into this, just a question on the last one. That table with the listing of the pollinators, is there a kind of monitoring index? You don't have to go back into it, but you can if you want. But that okay, let's see it. Thank you. You're very kind. Okay, this table here, is there a monitoring, like an index? Because it seems to me another thing that should be monitored, because as you just explained, it gives an indicator to broader biodiversity. So is she part of a monitoring program to monitor how well all these different pollinators are doing, their population, their general?
Yes.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
There is a project. There is a project that Dr. Dembleworth is spearheading. BestNet, and they're looking at pollinators across the region. I believe they have a website, and there where you can take pictures and upload it, and they will ID these pollinators, or they'll ID these insects. So insects, just take pictures of insects, and they'll catalog it, and they will try to capture that information. And I think at the end of the life cycle of the project, they will be publishing a report. But that stuff will live on forever on the internet. At least there'll be a catalog, a modern day catalog of what is currently out there. And then probably you can compare that to historical records that probably in the Natural History Museum in the UK, where they probably got, when they were here, they've got tons and tons of information. Everything is probably being catalogued and recorded. So you can use that as your baseline. Go to Natural History Museum, probably they'll have access to those records for the baseline, and then they'll compare it to probably what's available now. And then you could see what species you've lost and what you've gained, or what you haven't gained, or if you've come across something that was never found before. So there is a project ongoing to do that, and I can probably send you a link. I can probably see it. BestNet, BestNet World. Yeah, BestNet, Biodiversity and Ecoservices Network. Yeah, so BestNet, and that's funded by UNDP as well. All right, so I can besnet.world, and if you want to get information on that, you can get it. You can grab that info, and that's a project that's going on across the world.
All right. Very interesting. I mean, I'm thinking that is interesting what you've just explained, and what comes to my mind is like people. There are stock exchanges in the world, monitoring stocks and bonds and other instruments, financial instruments. But these are the things that should be monitored in a way, in a similar kind of depth of quality and detail. Because these metrics, as that point that was made about the relationship between the biodiversity of the pollinator and the general biodiversity, this thing is a key. It's a very important key.
Well, if you want to put that into more context, I think if you look at the Caribbean as a landmass of the world, I think it may be just under 1% or just a little over 1%. But
Mm.
the Caribbean carries a little over 2% of the world's biodiversity.
Mm.
So a region of less than 1% in mass carries just about 2% of the world's biodiversity is captured in these small chain of islands. So we're a very important microcosm of the world's ecosystem is locked in the Caribbean. So it's very important that we preserve the Caribbean and keep it as natural and as possible. Which
Yes.
you know, the way things are going now, it's kind of complicated because I mean our mindset is not that respects the ecosystem. Our mindset is that we want a big house, nice flash roads, nice this, nice that, but it has absolutely nothing to do with sustainability. So you know,
this pivots back to I'm going to use this as a point to just illustrate the value of a nature-centered pedagogy, which we use a system we call Yutumareket, which means unified knowledge, as our pedagogical form. And in it, we explicitly state harmony with nature as a principle, a protocol, a part of the practice of the approach to learning. So without those things, I know people may feel they generally have that, but if you don't explicitly state some of these things to bind the systems you build, the educative systems you build, then the system can drift away, and with it, the people drift away in their thinking. And so, as you just said, they can lose sight of the integral, the fundamental thing that they need, that is needed for the regions, for the planets. So you're absolutely right, and yeah, it's great to see all this detail. Brilliant.
Yeah, but you know, it's good detail, but you know, sometimes you can get lost in it. You know, you get lost in it, and then you realize there's a real world. There's your world in your mind, and the world of the bees, and then there's the world that everybody else lives in.
Well, I get you for that, but you see, this is where again the AI and the big data. This is the thing of the data now, because I've seen some projects where they are using satellite technology to talk about regions of Africa and the forests and the biodiversity just from satellite images. And it's obvious to me they're doing that for the Caribbean. It's being done globally. So agencies that have that capacity are using big data technology to make assessments about life and life dynamics. And that is good. But the development and the access to that needs to be equitable. The development of it needs to be equitable. So otherwise there will become inbuilt bias, inbuilt domination. It's inevitable. If you don't have equity, broad equity in things that are going to generate a power imbalance, then it will generate a power imbalance. That's the history of things.
Well, I mean, you know, we can get lost in all that, you know. But all I will say is that I as an individual try to put my best foot forward, try and work with those that can help me, and we can help one another.
Yeah.
And in our small sphere, our small space, we try and make a difference. And if there's enough of us out there doing that, we can try to you know, we'll make a difference either at a country level or a community level or a global level. But you know, if you start thinking way beyond, you know, like I don't know, it's the matrix is too immense and big for us to change overnight. You know, it's got to want to change.
No, I hear you. I commend you for your work and your associates, all those other leaders in the community of this that are bringing these things together. It's fantastic to see all that expertise, and it does feel immense, some of these questions, but really all I'm saying is that as immense as it is, there are existing agencies and persons are pursuing the immense view. So as it is, if one body of ones, or 2 or 3 or 10 bodies can start to pursue those big questions, then an equitable body of ones should pursue the big questions. That's all I'm really
saying. Definitely.
That's all I'm saying.
Of course, no doubt. So let's move on to my brother from Jamaica.
Okay.
Hugh Miller. Hugh Miller did an excellent presentation. He works with his presentation was on the impacting the Caribbean through social behavior changes, using apiculture as a tool to bring people together, especially the youth, introduce them to bees, introduce them to the open air, fresh air, being outside, being away from the PS2 or PS4 or PS5, whatever it is now, and the Xbox or whatever box it is. But actually getting outside and getting into the fresh air, and and working with something that you're probably built up some preconceived idea about bees, and then you go into the bees and it's quite a different, interesting experience. So he, in this paper, he speaks to I'll just read the abstract. This paper presents social behavior change through honeybee educational tours for primary to tertiary students as a critical stabilizer for apiculture as a super bioeconomy for the Caribbean. This practice of generational beekeeping for sustainable results rely on the sharing of knowledge and the impact of change for the long term. The writer will take you on a journey exploring aspects of apiculture specifically geared for the implementing and impact of behavior change strategies towards using biological resources for sustainable development. So, I mean, I think that speaks to itself exactly what the brother in Jamaica is doing. And his whole idea that if you can explain what the impacts of pollution, of the use of pesticides, of poor land management practices, how it impacts on the environment, how it will affect the bees, you impart that knowledge onto young persons. Even if you get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 to absorb that information and put that into practice in real life, it will make a difference.
Definitely.
And it will also help, them as individuals, as people, to be more thoughtful in how they deal with the environment. So this is a really interesting paper. It incorporates technology, widens the scope, and gives informative through several mediums, whether to simply provide knowledge, to send invitation to an in-person activity, the behavior change in this case is to influence social and economic good. So, there's a lot of impacts. You could use beekeeping for tours, apitourism, create employment. I mean, prior to COVID-19 wreaking havoc on the world, we had a really nice apitourism vibe going, working with cruise ship cruise ship passengers that come for the day. So we had a really good vibe, and we're hoping to grow that vibe into different islands. And then COVID came along and kind of spoiled that for us.
That will return. That will return at a premium for sure.
Yeah, man. So I mean, all these initiatives incorporate. So once you've got initiatives that are more natural, more that incorporate biodiversity, more things that incorporate living creatures, living things, and people, it give a different and better dynamic than the usual sun, sea, and rum.
Absolutely.
We want to try and elevate people's minds from that. So even if we can, the folks that come in from Europe and North America, if we can show them something positive and something good, maybe when they go back to North America and Europe, they can transcend with that good vibe, that transcend with that good feeling and to preserve the environment, because they're the number one stakeholders in the creation of the pollution and so forth that affects the world. So, you know, if we can send that message of love and one mind back to where the problem starts, maybe.
Well, this is it. Well,
problem
absolutely,
can get
commendable.
fixed.
It's a commendable effort and a very essential one. This connects for me, just to again use it to share some of our backstory. We have a tradition in our organisation, Abundant Centres UK Development Trust. The founding agency is an agency called Schools of Unified Learning, which is the holder of the pedagogy of the unified knowledge approach to learning. So our tradition inside of that, where we're using essentially steamed up learning, that's STEM plus the arts, African, Caribbean, cultural arts to teach math and science. This is the core of that work. Our tradition has been to take students and families from Europe, mainly the UK, back to the Caribbean or to Africa, to the continent, and do expeditions. So I have a tradition of Jamaica. My family's from Jamaica, so we've taken parties, large groups of families from the UK to Jamaica. We've toured the regions, dealing with the culture. We take them to Blue Mountain Peak as part of our tradition, like this. Little children, big people, and so
you have to.
This thing you're saying here, this connects very perfectly. I fully value the whole cultural exchange. This thing is so very important, and I'm speaking to that from the point of view of how it empowers young people who are in this part of the world, who have no reference. They have little reference to the nature here, and very little reference to the nature and culture of their parents. And their grandparents, and it's fundamental that these things are re-referenced. So again, I commend you for that, and I look forward to engaging. We wouldn't engage in it for tourism, but definitely in terms of expedition and cultural exchange. And it's a must.
Well, tying back to our regional project, one of the outputs that's it's going to happen is that we're creating a LARI, a center for learning, apiculture learning. It's going to be in a Ramsar site in the mangrove, in the south of the island. So this institute that we're creating will be a place for research and technology, specifically in apiculture and mangrove restoration and preservation. So speaks greatly to the biodiversity. So definitely, hopefully, you will, along going to see the Blue Mountains in Jamaica, you will come down south to the St. Lucia and you'll see the Piton Mountains, and you'll go to the world's one and only drive-in volcano, and you can bathe in the sulfur springs, the nice hot water, and enjoy the medicinal values of that.
Absolutely.
You know, eat some good local fish.
We done. Yes, absolutely. We're looking forward to that. The cadets need those things, and so do the families around them.
You need that kind of stimulation, man. Definitely.
Absolutely.
You need that kind of stimulation. So that's one of the outputs that we're looking at. So, but this is a great message in this paper, and it's something that you could go through, reference it, look through it. ACBO Online, Association of Caribbean Beekeeping Organisations, funded and supported by JFSGP UNDP.
Yeah, thanks.
So you could definitely, it's a great paper. You can take a look at. Okay, so our penultimate paper is from the most southern of the English-speaking Caribbean islands on mainland South America. This is from Guyana. And this was a presentation on pests and diseases. So it was a comparative analysis of the pests and diseases that affect honeybees from 2013 to 2020. They had done some, I think a North American university had done some work in Guyana. They did some analysis for them. Guyana and Trinidad have mainly Africanized bees. In most of the Caribbean islands, you have some strains of the Africanized bees, but it hasn't reached to the point where they have totally overtaken the Apis mellifera population. So you still, but these Guyana's 100% Apis sculata.
I have a question. I have a question.
Yes.
I've seen this term, Africanized honeybees. What does that mean? Why is it like this? Tell me, explain, unpack the term Africanized for me, please.
Okay, in the 1970s, some Brazilian scientists took some bees from Africa, which of a much more defensive nature than the nice tender European bees, but have a higher productivity ratio, and have a greater resistance to pests and diseases such as the varroa mite. So they were trying to assimilate an experiment, a very successful experiment that was done by English brother called Brother Adams, who was a monk at Buckfast Abbey in Devon. And they were in the late, I think it's 1940s or 1960s. There's something called Isle of Wight disease that wiped out a lot of bees in the UK. So Brother Adams went across the world collecting different species of bees from around the world, and then he crossbred them at the Dartmoor moors, and he created a line of bee called the Buckfast. He called it the Buckfast bee, which was known for its gentleness, very, very gentle bees, but also very high production, produce a lot of honey, collect a lot of pollen, very, very busy bees, very industrious, really high productivity. To coin them, industrious, yes, industrious. All right, so he developed that line of bees in response to the Isle of Wight disease that affected bees, which I think is now being blamed to call a treacherous mite, which is basically a mite that lives in the throat of the bees, and it chokes them to death eventually. It breeds and multiplies, and it will access for the trachea. So the Brazilian scientists wanted to produce their own kind of bees, and they were doing their experiments in Brazil and doing their crossbreeding and whatever. And who knows what they were doing? Only them knows. And some of their bees escaped the lab.
Wow!
And I think within pretty much 10 years, all the European bees that were in. So Argentina, the temperature is kind of colder there, so the bees couldn't survive in that environment. So that those Africanized lines couldn't survive. The Apis sculata didn't really like that area. So the northern, from like north, going Brazil, Colombia, all the way up to Central America, up to southern parts of California and Arizona's border countries, and we call Africanized lines of bees. And some of the Caribbean islands, like Trinidad, mainland Trinidad is 100% Africanized, whereas the island of Tobago, because it's isolated, it's still Western. They still have the Western honeybees. They're not Africanized yet. But then if you go up the island chain, they have intermix, not to the extent, but you have some hybridization where the two lines meet and they cross. And
in a natural way, or by design of the local?
Yes, by natural way, naturally. So like you got maybe a container ship comes, a swarm of bees on it, they offload, the bees get out into the wider community, and so forth.
Okay. Okay, but what I mean is, do the bees first of all? The term Africanized, if I'm clear what you're saying, is based on the idea that the a the bee that was there, the first bee that was there was bred with an African bee, and then you have this variant of bee called Africanized bee. Is that correct, or am I mistaken for this?
No. So Africanized bee, the Latin name is Apis sculetta.
So sorry, one moment. So then are you just saying African bee? It's the African bee.
Yeah.
Why
Apis sculetta?
Why call it Africanized?
It's the region. Apis sculetta is from the African continent.
Yeah.
So it's they're associating the species with the continent.
Okay, no, I get that. What I'm trying to get to is, why not just say that there are Sculetta bees in the region? I just don't. This term Africanized bees implies some next dynamic. Trying to pin down
mainstream media. Mainstream media and these folks always like to sex up things for their
I get you. This is why the question has got to me, because I am one that is sensitive to the confusing words, and I like to crush them. The confusion.
Similarly, like you got with the coronavirus and the so-called South African strain, total BS. I mean, who knows it came from South Africa? It was just spotted in South Africa. It was identified in South Africa first. That's all, but it's called the South African strain. I think it's that mainstream media. I mean, you've got to blame for that.
When I see this term Africanized bee, basically it's the Sculetta bee.
Apis sculetta.
Yes. Sculetta. Okay. But it's not a variation of it. It's that bee.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's I don't quote me on that, but yeah, it's a variation of it, but how best can I describe it? Apis sculetta. How best can I describe that for you? Yeah, I mean, if you go to Wikipedia, you Google it, Apis sculetta, Apis, APIS, SCUTLLATA, the Africanized bee, also known as Africanized honeybee, and known as colloquially as the killer bee, is a hybrid of the Western honeybee, produced originally by crossbreeding the East African lowland honeybee, A.M. sculetta, with various European honeybee species such as the Italian honeybee, Apis M. linguista, and the Liberian honeybee, A.M. liberianus. Okay, so that's
okay. I see.
That's a more.
I see.
So it's a crossbreed between 2 or 3 species. Right?
I see. So this term Africanized is a hybrid. It's a hybrid bee.
It's a hybrid.
Is now considered to be a challenging creature to handle.
Not really. I mean, you just have to. I mean, here's the problem. I mean, I've got friends in Ghana, I've got friends in Trinidad who are beekeepers.
Yeah.
They used to go and check their bees in their grandfather used to, because it's 1 generation away. The hybridization occurred.
Mm-hmm.
So their grandfather used to go and check his bees in his boxer shorts and a t-shirt, and do his hive inspection, and everything is nice. And one morning he went and tried and do that, and he gave his ass bust. So that's the reality. That's how quick it happens, because what will happen is, I'm a breeder. I have some beautiful colonies that, I could just go there, my boxer shorts and my vest and just my smoker, no veil, no nothing, and I can do an entire hive inspection. And then you will find one day I say a hybrid queen. Yeah, that's a better word, a hybrid queen. A virgin hybrid will enter that hive, kill my nice queen, and take over the hive, and the behavior of the bees will change overnight. All right, so because remember, bees are living in a box, which is normally dark, and they use pheromones to communicate with one another. So the scent the queen releases dictates the behavior of the colony.
Yeah.
All right. So, but it's I mean, it's working with Africanized bees is really it's challenging. It's really cool. I mean, if you're into the adrenaline rush, you know, of like this intense, but like this intense thing, just like the movies going on around you. Yeah, it's cool. You know, but if you don't got the stomach for that, then you know you might pass out. But it is what it is. But it's fun. I mean, I remember going out with some Africanized, some hybridized bees, or you know, for the first time with the president of the ACBO, Mr. Aubrey Roberts in Ghana, and he was doing some work in an apiary just off the Sluisdijk Highway, and my father was with me, and he didn't have a suit, so my dad stayed in the vehicle, and my Aubrey, one of his guys, and we went to do some work in the bees. So there was like this let's say a horseshoe shape, maybe about 50-meter area, and the hives were spaced out maybe let's say about every 4 or 5 meters you would find a hive in a semicircle kind of a shape. Right? So we started harvesting honey. So we're going through the boxes, the first box. So now everything is oversized. So smoker's like twice the size. I can share some pictures with you, but everything is oversized because you're using more smoke, so it's a bigger smoker. So everything is bigger. So we smoke the hives. We start pulling some honey, put it in the boxes. So we're doing our work. So we're going around in this half circle. So we got about halfway, but I'm always looking to the right because we're going this way. So I'm always looking to the right, and I'm watching the bees we ain't get to yet, because it's very intense. It's like the bees are like crazy. It's like the bees are attacking you mercilessly. All right. And then I said, Aubrey, man, look. So when I'm looking at the boxes lower down, so the boxes over time, the whole front of the boxes are covered with bees. They're covered, it's like covered. It's like, okay, come. They say, come. We're waiting for you. Come when you get here. Be ready because we're waiting for you. Like the boxes we haven't got to yet. They're covered, waiting for us to arrive. So they're saying, if you're bad, come. We're ready for you now. So if you're bad, come because we're ready and waiting for you. So because progressively as we got round and we come round, you go around this circle of bees. It's like it was like you get mad, So like the bees is just ready. Come. We're waiting for you. Come. If you're bad, if you come. So we kind of like. So now, I think we should like call it a day because we had the boxes that we had to carry were full up already, and like it getting real bad. It was getting really, 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 really bad. So you said, you know what, man, let's quit while we still have skin on our back. Them fellas there, it was like the boxes are like stacked 2-3 boxes high, 4 and it's like bees load on the outside just waiting. It's like, all right, come, that boy's bad, come, we're ready for you. Take you out. So it's a different experience to working with the more European bees because like they're not as defensive. They can get as nasty as these guys, but they're not a lot less defensive. And then we kind of like breed out that line so we can breed out that defensive nature. But it's if you're gonna work with Africanized bees, it's get ready for war. It's a different experience. It's a real different experience. I'm not saying that Western honeybees are less, but they have real nice ones. You can get some stinky ones that have a little bad attitude, but these ones, real dread.
I hear you. I hear you. I'm just. It's a fascinating story you just shared there, and I'm feeling it.
Yes.
You mentioned something before that story. Just the point about an Africanized queen entering a hive, killing the queen in there, and taking it over. Have you witnessed that? Is that like a direct witness?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, man.
So like, wait,
Several times.
let me just be clear. So you have a hive, the queen in there, and then sometime you go back and then it's a new queen, and the whole setup is different.
Yeah. So
Okay.
like for instance, when we mark our queens, we'll put like a little red dot, or we'll stick a small disc with a number on the back of the queens. So especially our breeding stock, so we know, we easily to identify them, and we know what year they are and whatever. So as breeders, we need to do that to measure and quantify the lines, so we can trace back that queen. There's a daughter of this particular queen, and so forth. If we have start with the F0 lines, we can say, okay, this is the F0 queen, and all the daughters we make from that queen, we know exactly what they expect. So if we cross, so we do something called instrumental insemination, where we'll collect drone sperm from 100 or so drones from one particular colony. And then we would inseminate virgin queens with that drone sperm that has similar characteristics and similar traits. So if I've got a colony of bees that produce tons and tons of honey, really nice, they've got good hygiene, the hive's always nice and clean, they're very good with little problems, little pathogens that may turn up, they manage the varroa very well. Things like chalk brood are very scarce. You don't really see that in the hives, and really good colony of bees. They end the season well and they build back up well. I might say, okay, I want to breed from that queen this year. So I will make virgin queens from that colony, and I may have a very similar colony that has similar characteristics from another colony. So I would take the drone sperm from one colony, I'll make queens with another colony, and then we'll go under a microscope and we'll instrumentally inseminate the spermatheca, where the queen holds the sperm for the period of her lifespan. So she only mates once, and after that one mating, that's the sperm she will use to fertilize all her eggs. So a female worker bee, which is the majority of the bees in the hive, fertilize eggs. And the male bees, which are only produced when there's a surplus of food and they want to spread the genetics of the colony, are just one side, unfertilized eggs. All right, so females have 32 chromosomes and males have 16. All right, so if we want to, so what we do that, so we create very nice lines of queens which have the behavioral traits that we want. So if I want to have, so I may have I've had times where I'm in my breeding apiary where I've prepared a colony to accept a new queen. So I may have left that colony of bees queenless. And then I may have a colony in the apiary that's going for a problem or has a problem. The queen will seek out, I don't know how they do it, but I've seen queens from a colony I have at one end of my property, which is numbered, and she's ended up in a box of bees that I made queenless, and she's there. But the box she came from has a problem, like maybe doesn't have enough nurse bees, or there's not enough food, or something's wrong. So she would have left it, and she'll go and find a call. Y'all no queen. Well, look, me, I'm here. I'll take over. I've had queens that when we make a lot of virgins, and we may have missed to a queen cell, and one just got out, and she's or she's not of the right line, and we didn't realize. So you find that when you're breeding. So one of the difference between the so-called Africanized bees and the European bees is that the hybrid so-called Africanized bee, she will emerge. It will take her 14 days to emerge from a queen cell, where a European queen will take 16 days to emerge from a queen cell. So the hybridized bees actually finishes the gestation process a full 2 days before a European queen. So we do something called grafting. If the trait is there, we're not sure of it. You might find that the hybridized queen will hatch before. Now, when the queen hatches, she'll go out and she'll kill all the other queens before they hatch. So this is one of the signs. So sometimes you'll find if you might have there might be a colony or so, a feral colony somewhere in the area, and virgin queens go out and they're looking for a colony to take over, and they'll go in and take it over. A virgin queen or a queen, an Africanized queen, can go in with just a couple of workers and take over a colony of bees, kill the queen, and take over. It's very simple. We've seen bees are not these sweet, loving things. Bees are real serious customers, man. They have their own the whole ecosystem, the whole world going on with them. So it's a real interesting line of work, line of science.
It's fascinating. I've got a question. I've got many questions, but I'm going to try and keep myself disciplined for this. So when you inseminate a queen,
yes,
does that queen therefore not do the classic flights for mating? She doesn't need to get mated now because she's been inseminated.
So what we do to recreate that process. So when we inseminate her, we knock her out with CO2 gas. And while we're doing the procedure, we have a slow keep her under. And then once we've finished, we'll let her revive, and then we'll knock her out a second time with CO2 gas. And that's for that process that stimulates the mating flight, maybe the out of breath, the breathing, whatever. But scientifically, that's somebody worked it out. They gas them twice and it worked, so they don't need to go. They think they've been on a mating flight twice. And that's how it works.
Incredible. Incredible. Okay.
It's crazy stuff, man. Crazy stuff. But I mean, that's just how it is, man. That's how it is. But that simulates the mating flight. I special shout out to two guys that gave me some serious training in instrumental lessons all the way down there. I think at Devon, Saltash. He gave me I went to his apiaries in the UK and I did a lot of training with him. And he's come to the Caribbean twice to do training, to train me and work with me and other beekeepers in St. Lucia. And another gentleman called Benjamin Poirot of France. He took my queen rearing, my beekeeping to the next level. All right, so these guys, I'm gonna give them a special mention. And I'm always in contact with them. They're kind of like my mentors, and I work with these guys a lot. Always bounce ideas off them. If I'm not sure of something, I could always reach out to them and they say, "Yeah, man, shoot me back an email or WhatsApp and do this, do that." So I have to give these guys some kudos. These are the guys that really bring me forward to where I was.
It's deep levels.
Yes,
for that. Okay.
So we were just talking, and we haven't hit this presentation yet. So we're in Guyana now.
Okay.
So this is a scientific study. There's a paper on what they did. They took samples of bees. They were looking for these viruses, deformed wing virus, Lake Sinai virus, aphid leaf paralysis virus, black queen cell virus, chronic bee paralysis virus, acute bee paralysis virus, sackbrood virus, slow bee paralysis virus, muku virus, and there's probably about 6 or 7 more that on the list that they probably just didn't even put on the list. So it just explains the methodology to as to how they took the tests and what they did and what was found and so on and so forth. And it was quite an interesting study. And they also took pollen samples once again. And this was done by a university in the States. I can't remember the name of the university, and I don't think that they were mentioned in the document. But these are the regions of Guyana. This gives you an idea of the vastness of Guyana, how big it is. You could probably fit St. Lucia in somewhere in the Essequibo River and still have space. That's how big Guyana is. It's this river here. You could fit several Caribbean islands just in that river. So and it just goes through the methodology and it gives the results of the analysis and so forth. So this is an interesting scientific paper if you guys want to take a look at it. We could take a look at it and the results of what they got. So this is an interesting paper. Thanks to the guys at GAS, Guyana Apiculture Society, Obi Roberts, and so forth. All right.
Okay.
Okay, so that's that presentation.
Level being 9, more detail mastery. On our level being level 9, mastery more detail on level being 9 mastery program. Wow! Mastery program. Level being 9 mastery.
So you want to do? We've got our guys here. I can do a couple of seconds if you, or at least 1 or 2 minutes in this presentation from Trinidad. This is a group I've been working with in Trinidad.
This is the video. What I would suggest we do, because I feel the technical papers, this is a thing in itself. Right. So I'm going to ask you to not do the country reviews. We've got, I think now our audience has got the idea about the scope of the thing that we're talking about. So let's play the full video, because I think it's 8 minutes or so. Is that right?
I think yes, that video is about 8 minutes. Yes.
I think it would be nice to hear that, and then we'll summarize on this. Let's do that.
There is another nice video like that from Suriname as well. It was a great presentation from Suriname.
Okay.
That's also in South America. But let's do my guys from Brasso Seco, man. My boys from Brasso Seco. Let's hit my boys from Brasso Seco up. Okay, here we go.
Good day, everyone. My name is Javed Omadin.
And I am Janessa de Ramos.
And we're both from the Brasso Seco Monlacqua Farmers Association. We feel very privileged to be able to present today at the 10th ACBO Beekeeping Congress on the topic of beekeeping as a mechanism for realizing sustainable community livelihoods.
The Brasso Seco Monlacqua Farmers Association has an ongoing beekeeping project for the past 3 years, and during this time has produced honey which it sells under the brand name Honeysuckles. Members of this group manage a total of 330 hives, 40 of which belong to the organization. The group harvests a total of 1,650 gallons of honey annually.
Brasso Seco is located in a pristine forested area which produces honey of exquisite quality and has developed excellent farming models. For example, that of the Brasso Seco Chocolate Company and Honey Seco, our label. The area has a high youth delinquency rate and low levels of employment opportunities. It also suffers from high levels of deforestation as a result of unsustainable farming practices, especially Christophine farming, as well as the heavy use of agrochemicals associated with monocropping. Historically, the area has been affected by an increase in crime rate. Also, because of the excellent honey production, there's an influx of beekeepers from outside the area who wish to set up apiaries, thereby pushing the limits of the carrying capacity of the area.
The current aims of this organization are to create means for environmentally sustainable livelihoods through beekeeping. Our main objectives include to train members in the production of a variety of high value-added products, to train members in conducting apicultural tours, to improve the genetics of the bee stock by establishment of a queen rearing lab, to train farmers in integrated agricultural practices, which, when incentivized by beekeeping, will reduce pesticide use, to increase the strength of hives through capacity building in hive management and sensor use.
These goals will be achieved through a few different activities, holding mead making, wax processing, and nucleus production trainings with 25 community members, producing an apicultural tour guide training manual which will be used to train persons in the effective delivery of apicultural tours, conducting trainings in proper hive management for 15 beekeepers, developing a fully equipped and fully functional queen rearing lab which will be used to breed new strains of highly productive queens. In addition, the training of 15 beekeepers in queen rearing techniques, training of 15 farmers in integrated agricultural practices, the planting of 1,000 native forest trees in and around the communities of Brasseseco and Monlacqua.
So far, for this project, we have achieved the following. Completed a mead production workshop, and farmers have set batches of mead for Christmas. Conducted a survey of beekeepers to gather their knowledge and understanding, as well as begun preparing content on apicultural tourism for dissemination. Conducted online training activities with our trainer, IAC St. Lucia, in hive management and are currently preparing hives for the upcoming
Cultural practices.
Season. Conducted online training with IAC in queen rearing and conducted an integrated agricultural workshop and planted 300 of the 1,000 trees specified in our project.
The survey conducted in the area provided baseline information on the beekeepers, as well as information on understanding of the relationship between beekeeping and environmental and social sustainability. The survey found that most of the beekeepers are male, with only 3 females out of 16. Most of the farmers own more than 20 hives, and most learn the trade from apprenticeships.
It was found that 87.5% of beekeepers not only cut less trees as a result of beekeeping, but also regularly plant trees to increase forage. In addition, 81.3% of individuals said that they use less pesticides as a result of beekeeping. It is clear that these results indicate that beekeepers are more likely to practice environmentally sustainable farming practices. Given the strong relation between farming and beekeeping, we can infer that the more farmers that can be encouraged into beekeeping, while being educated and encouraged in environmentally sustainable farming practices, the more environmental sustainability can be realized in the community.
Our survey highlighted that over 80% of farmers have started already using less chemicals, especially pesticides, because of beekeeping. This is a plus not only in terms of less toxic chemicals to our environment, but for the conservation of pollinators in our area.
87.5% of our surveyed beekeepers thought that beekeeping helped the community, whilst 62.5% said that they hired persons from the community to do work for them. This shows that beekeeping helps to provide employment and create livelihoods, not just for beekeepers but for other members of the community. When asked how beekeeping has helped the community, participants noted that it improves income generation for farmers, increases employment, helped to build community spirit, and provided opportunities for youth.
It was also found that while all participants considered beekeeping to provide valuable income to them and their families, the majority had an alternative livelihood. The survey indicated there's a strong link between the occupation of farming and beekeeping, as 71.4% noted that farming was an alternative source of income.
All participants said that they thought honey and other hive products can help to provide a sustainable livelihood in their community. In addition, most members produced other hive products, some of which are mead, soaps, wax, propolis, pollen, honey chocolates, and jam. This shows that because beekeepers already produce some value-added products, there is potential for a diverse bee product industry.
Overall, the survey found that even though our project is still ongoing, many benefits to the community have already begun to be recognized, socially, economically, and environmentally. Social benefits included building community spirit, opportunities for youth to direct them away from nefarious activities, as well as improved livelihoods for community members. The economic benefits included increased employment, increased business opportunities, and the realization of entrepreneurship opportunities, for example, through the development and sale of high value-added products, such as mead. The environmental benefits included pollination, which resulted in healthy harvests of crops for farmers. Also, there was a reduction in pesticide use, as well as the increased tree planting activities, especially in terms of rehabilitation of hillsides impacted by landslides during heavy rainfall events in the past. There's one other advantage not mentioned by farmers here. This project has also helped us in terms of developing our skills in project management, stakeholder relations, as well as the ability to communicate our work as is being done right now.
We are very grateful for the opportunity provided today to present our work, and thank you for listening. We are now open for any questions.
Level being 9, more detail mastery. On our level being webinar 9 mastery program. Detail on level being 9 mastery program. Wow! Mastery program. Mastery program. Level being 9 mastery.
That was good. That was great. Is there a PDF for that?
Yes. Yes, there should be. I can get it and I can email it to you.
Okay. I mean, the whole things. Thank you so much. This is a brilliant set of insights. I'm so glad that we've come to know of this. Yeah, I think, as I said, just doing the technical papers. When I say just, I mean what you've just done is really great, and it just wouldn't be right to try and put more on top of that. So we have to reserve. People have to know that they should go see the country papers. It's obvious. The country reports, which is also on the same page. Give us the website again, please.
ACBO online, acboonline.com, and from there it'll give you access. You can, from here, you could sign up to our quarterly newsletter that will give you information on what's happening with regards to Caribbean beekeeping. We just concluded a really interesting. We plan on doing JFSGP is sponsoring and financing, helping to coordinate our first annual honey show in St. Lucia. Hopefully it will be a regional situation as opposed to just being St. Lucian honey only, but hopefully it'll be a regional competition. And that's going to be slated for December. So we just finished doing that. but so there'll be lots. So you could sign up to subscribe to our newsletter on the front page here, and this was uh, our last edition you could see in January on our cover page. So, but ACBO Online, you've got lots of different things that you can catch up with on the archive there, and it connects to a lot of things.
It's brilliant. Thank you so much. I have a question. I have many questions, but I'm going to discipline myself because we'll be here for all day and all night talking about this. Now, you said a few times that you are dealing with the English-speaking regions of the Caribbean. Does that mean that there is some similar entity doing something for the French-speaking parts of the Caribbean, other languages? How does that work?
Well, no, well, that's not entirely true. So I mean, obviously, our native tongue is English, but some of us are native in St. Lucia. Our native tongue is Creole, French Creole. So if you notice, we had presentations from Martinique, the neighboring island of Martinique, which is a department of France. We also had presentations from Guadeloupe as well. We had it's not here, I think Guadeloupe. No, Guadeloupe is above it. Yeah, we had Guadeloupe as well. And we had a presentation from the Dominican Republic as well. Yeah, where is the Dominican Republic? We should have had a presentation from the Dominican Republic, Bahamas, Trinidad. You've got, that's Suriname. That's strange. We're missing a presentation. Dominican Republic, number 2, Santiago Rivas. Yes. So we have Spanish, French, and Dutch, because the Surinamese is Dutch. So we have all of the flavors of the Caribbean are part of ACBO. So we had reached out to our brothers in Haiti, but they were unable to put together a presentation at that time to get Haiti on board. But you've got pretty much a good sense of Caribbean beekeeping from the site here. So we are primarily English, but we do reach out to all our brothers and sisters in all of our countries. So we're Caribbean, one people.
Yeah. That's what I thought. So now you've qualified it. I get you. Just as you mentioned Haiti, have you been to Haiti? Do you know much about the Haitian beekeeping setup?
Unfortunately, I haven't had the privilege of going to Haiti. I would like to, at some point in time, visit Haiti. Get the feeling of what beekeeping is like in Haiti, but I haven't had that privilege at this time.
So would I. I would like to visit Haiti also, for several reasons. So that now gives me a nice angle, a good angle to another point to bring me there.
Definitely. Yeah. Culturally, I mean, Haiti's a very significant people of Afro-Caribbean descent. Haiti is a very important place. Martinique is a very important place because a lot of our ancestors entered the Caribbean through Fort de France. So Fort de France is an important place. There's a lot of information historically in Fort de France. So it's it's one of those places where historically there's a lot of information there. But Haiti, yes, definitely Haiti, definitely.
Okay. But, I think you've done, as I said, it's really, I'm so pleased with what you've just done. It's opened up the world of the science of the beekeeping from the Caribbean perspective. Just fantastic. I don't know.
I mean,
I'm not.
If your team,
my words now. So,
if your team in the UK wants to lean on us as a resource, we're all Caribbean people together, man. So if you want to lean
it's
on
not
us
even one. We need to. So, And we will. If you're willing, then definitely we will. Probably if you weren't willing, we'd try and impose ourselves anyway. But I'm glad you're willing.
My pleasure.
Yeah, no, that's great.
My pleasure.
That's great. I mean, as we're talking, probably I'll talk to you differently. But for sure, our organization would like to be part of the association. So I hope there's a way that we can become there's a way that we can register for that.
Yeah.
So
that's done deal. It's already happened.
Fantastic.
We are one people, one mind, man. One love.
This is it.
All
Absolutely.
Of us
Absolutely.
You don't have to ask. You don't have to ask for that. That's a given.
Give thanks. Absolutely, it's great. Okay, so obviously we've got a lot to talk about differently from this introduction. This is the first one we've done, and even before we did it, we've started to speak about other things that we should have podcasts on. Do you want to give a hint towards that, just as because we discussed another conversation to have, and do you want to give a hint towards that? The history we were talking about,
sure, yeah.
And you have a kind of clarity for this. You've touched on it certainly, but not quite the way that you introduced it to me before.
Yeah, well, in the context of your organization, especially to speak to ethnicity of our people and how we obviously people of the Caribbean have a very complicated history, especially those of our forefathers, and in a historical context. So apiculture or beekeeping is heavily interwoven into Caribbean culture, and especially if you go through some of the presentations, I probably tried to give a history of beekeeping in the Caribbean, maybe as a separate podcast, because the history of Caribbean of beekeeping in the Caribbean also runs parallel to colonization and the enslavement of our people. So all these things run in parallel, and it was one of the parallel economies that ran through all these Caribbean islands, because for example, there's a tree called the logwood tree in English, logwood or bloodwood tree. In Creole we call it capesh. Now this tree was brought to the Caribbean by the British, because you take the bark of the tree itself, the wood itself, and you boil it, and you can make a red dye. So they used to grow tons of capish. It originates from the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. But the British took the tree and spread it right through the Caribbean islands. Right? So, and then they used to harvest it and ship it to England to make a red dye. It was one of the big commerce. None of us know that. Right? We just see it. So if you live in the Caribbean, you see this capish tree all of it. Now, the capish tree is this is coming into bloom now. It always blooms in line with the equinox. Beautiful smelling flower. Beautiful, smells beautiful. And in our history as a people, so they used to use it to make dye color. It was so in the 1600s, the red dye was impossible. Like if you could make a red dye, color could wash. It was impossible. It was a very highly sought after until they could artificially make red dye and color fast. This was a source of red dye in the Caribbean. They cut the capish trees or bloodwood or redwood trees, ship them back to England on the ships, and boil them in the textile sector, and make red dye. So that was a main cash crop within the Caribbean. But hand in hand with that, beekeeping worked alongside with that, because you've got this wonderful nectar source, and the Caribbean used to export, or as when it was a colony, a lot of honey from the Caribbean used to go directly to the UK.
Hmm.
So there are a lot of parallel industries.
Okay.
That
you given the taster, and
that occurred.
It's important. It's an important conversation.
So it's 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 a complicated past. So beekeeping, as was for some of our forefathers, it was an opportunity to make a little extra dollar, to make that little extra difference, to put food on the table, to send you buy books and shoes and clothes for your children. This was a activity that guys did on the side to give them that little extra edge. So there's been, we use the term in solution, adult suffrage. The time before people got the ability to vote and do things for themselves in the Caribbean. These were the things that people did. So, there's a long history of beekeeping and working with agriculture in the Caribbean, and people trying to do the best they can. And so I think one of the things that has been overlooked, especially in apiculture, because most of the people you see in apiculture, blonde hair, blue eyes, kind of folks. But I think it'd be good for your team and the youth in the community to see there are other persons in the agriculture sector making a difference. And I think as a kid that grew up in London, I grew up in South London. A black guy being a farmer, that's impossible, man. He's gonna do that. But it's if you got the heart and the commitment, it's a viable career.
Absolutely, it's essential knowledge.
And instead of us focusing or focusing young people so much on I want to do this, I want to be a lawyer, but there's a glut of lawyers. There's zillions of lawyers. Lawyers are like a dime a dozen now, because there's so many lawyers. There's so many accountants are a dime a dozen. You want to be an assistant in a shop or in a retail doing some basic menial job, when if you got the right exposure and you've got the heart, agriculture is where your roots is at. That's where your people are from, agriculture. And the agriculture sector can give you great rewards, because you are creating something, you're making something, you're working with nature to create something value added. Whereas if you sit down nothing wrong with sitting in a retail shop selling whatever somebody makes that you buy off Amazon or comes out of China and you resell it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's great. Kudos to you if that's what you do. You make money from it. But it could be a much more rewarding experience for you if you go into agriculture, start growing your own food.
This point you're making, this is one of the reasons why I love the project, because in keeping a hive, this is our entry into farming. And most people wouldn't have, the layperson may not relate it like that, but it's just direct farming. So yeah, and you don't need to have the big farm to do it. I mean, you do need to have something. You have to have some setup and some procedures. But it's not the same as having to invest in a farm to do farming, but it is farming, and all the mind of the farmer will kick in. So it's great.
There you go.
They need to have
and exactly. And people of people, and that's what our people do, man. We're not saying that there's nothing with being an architect or being a banker or being whatever you want to be, but getting that gravitation, getting that connection with the soil, with the earth, with what's happening around you. I mean, my formative years I spent in banking, then I went into IT, then I went into hospitality management, then I went back to IT, then I went into mobile communications,
Mm.
and I finally ended up as a beekeeper. So I took all the things that I knew, all the experience in IT, all the experience I knew in finance, all the experience I used in gathered in all those, picked up in all those years
Mm.
of working in different fields, and I applied it to agriculture, and something different happened. So I think we as it's all well and good having picking up these little skills along the way, but if you can zoom in on food or production of food production,
Mm.
I'm not talking about going to the supermarket or going to a wholesaler and buying food and cooking it and selling it. That's not food production. I'm talking about food production from the source,
Mm-hmm.
starting from
The essential,
zero
the fundamentals.
and creating food. All right,
Mm.
nobody can't take that away from you. If you can grow a cucumber or a tomato, all right, that's yours.
Mm.
You could eat that, and it costs you nothing to create that.
Mm.
And when you can understand that you can do, that's the essence of bartering and trade. So if you got a beehive and you could produce 20 gallons of honey, that's yours. And when you
Mm.
produce 20 gallons of honey, it can sit there as a savings. You don't have to save, because as long as you harvest that and it's got a moisture content below 18%, it could sit there for a year, 2 years.
Mm.
And then you could decide to sell it when you need some money.
Mm.
It's not gonna spoil. So this is one of the beautiful things about working with honey, that okay, I got 200 gallons of honey I sitting on from
Mm.
January last year. I might decide to put that out on the market now because the price is right,
Mm.
or I need to do something for myself. Let me drop that
Mm.
and get the return I require. So working with honey and other products derived from the hive, and we could start talking about value-added products. We could start propolis and collecting the venom from the bees, and
Mm.
all kind of different things. We could start looking at royal jelly. All these are income streams that you can derive from one little colony of bees or several colonies of bees.
Mm. Mm.
So it's an opportunity for you. I mean, I wish when I was 18, if I knowing what I know now, if I was 18, all those stupid harebrained schemes I probably created in my mind that if I just went straight to bees at 18, I would be good all now.
Mm.
So these are the things that we have to look at, and if we can pass on this knowledge to the next generation
Mm.
to help that generation come up. Some of them might not make it because bees is not for everybody.
Mm.
But if bees is an opportunity you wish to pursue and you're committed to it, it's something that can give you back the rewards that you require. This is one of those industries. What you put in
Yeah.
is what you get back. If you put in $10, you get $10 back out. If you put $1,000, you get $1,000 back out. It's just one of those businesses. It works
Mm-hmm.
straight.
Well,
Easy.
I mean, for me, what you said is very it's inspiring. I hope that it inspires people to get to think of the career of the business opportunity, the learning opportunity, the connection back to culture, agriculture and culture. But also in terms of our project, I'm looking at all the transferable skill, all the skills we've just talked about, all the science and the technology, the engineering and the math, all of it is transferable. Once you've learned this thing through this
Yes.
way, you can transfer it to
Yes.
any other sector that needs those
Anything.
things. And so
Correct.
in terms of Black Open University, that's part of our value for the project. So whilst I would happily encourage ones who pick up on the idea of becoming a beekeeper, I have to encourage the ones who don't think they're going to be a beekeeper, just to know the transferability of the skill, the high value of the skill,
Yes.
and importantly,
Yes.
the ease of connecting to the farming as a vehicle,
Yes.
as a learning pathway. All that connectedness is article groundation, and there's not many ways to do that. So yeah, it's great. This is why I'm so pleased that we've connected to this this program. It's opened up so many things already. I mean, you're inside of our Black Beekeepers Global Forum, and your experience will, people in there will be very pleased to hear more of what you're about. When they see this, they'll be more clear on what your organization is about. But for me, I think also the connection when the Caribbean, like this regional connection, connects to the regional connections on the continent. I had a conversation with Anthony, and we stumbled into this reasoning about the quality and how there were, at a point in time, Europe had put up essentially trade barriers to block out the quality in the competitions like this, some barrier structures. And it occurred to me that there needs to be quality competitions and programs pan-Africa. And when I say pan-Africa, I'm including the Caribbean. Pan-Africa is a global term. It's just a cultural point of origin, or a cultural value point that sits around the reasoning of Pan-Africa. So it shouldn't be that it should be that if the Caribbean is producing the best honey in the world by international standards, and I'm sure that there are going to be some beekeepers pan-Africa that feel that their honey is the best in the world also. We should compete for that. And what was important for me in the conversation with Anthony is that the Caribbean's position as the best comes based on the science. It's built on the science. It's built on quality assurance. So that this thing often is missed when we talk about excellence in things, is what's behind it to get to that position.
Okay, I agree with that statement to a point. I'm not a person into saying the best, this is the best, that is the best.
Okay.
I'm saying we're all as good as one another, and we all have our own uniqueness.
Isn't it true that the Caribbean have won international honey competitions? Isn't this true?
Yeah, Trinidad. I could actually, if we had the time, I've got a great presentation. I can actually.
No, you don't need to go back into it. But my simple point is, if the region is consistently winning competition, it's a thing.
Yes, it is true. I mean, you've got most recently Dr. Valma Jessamy in Grenada. She's won the Hender Cup, multiple winner of the Hender Cup in the London Honey Show. You've got Trinidad and Tobago from probably I forgot the years, but they've won it through 2 or 3 times. I think they were the first ones to win it out of the Caribbean, was Trinidad and Tobago. A couple out of Trinidad. They were the first ones to win it. So, and then it used to, I mean, the trade barrier thing, okay, the trade barrier came about, but it wasn't specifically to stop Caribbean honey entering the region. It was more of a case of that Caribbean food products, if you didn't have what we call a residual monitoring plan was required. So that was an intergovernmental agreement between the European Union and the Caribbean countries, that your food products will be considered third party. I would require additional certification to get into the country. So, for instance, we used to export banana. We used to export fruit, meats, and fish, and all kinds of things to Europe, and then that stopped because, okay, you need to have a residual monitoring plan for food safety. All right, so honey as an animal food product was, by extension, fell into that bracket because it's a food product. So if there's no residual monitoring plan, even though the chemicals and the use of pesticides in the Caribbean are like nominal compared to Europe, right? I mean, you know, it's like, yeah, come on, give us a break. You got to compare our pesticide use, a part of the world that represents 1% of the world's land mass. We think we really have a pesticide use issue, but I mean, when you create rules, you create rules. And that was the issue. So I think I'm just pull up my records. In 1998, Trinidad placed second and won the silver medal in the international honey competition. And then in 1999, they actually won the Hender Cup. So Trinidad placed first place within the Hender Cup, and Tobago won. So Trinidad won it in 1999, and they won it a second time in 2000. I think it's 2001 or 2000 is when the rules changed, and you couldn't get honey to come into the UK without this residual monitoring plan situation. Otherwise, they were trying to get the 3 times in a row. They would have won the Hender Cup, and then they would have got to keep the cup. I think I'm not sure if Dr. Jessamy's won it 3 times. So then, after following on from that, so that whole process of Trinidad and Tobago entering the honey into the London Honey Show was done through the government. So it was a government thing, a government project, you know, so they would send up the honey. The representative was a gentleman, the past president of ACBO, Mr. Gladstone Solomon of Trinidad and Tobago, who resides in Tobago. So he's actually certified. He's actually a lifetime, because of his work and bringing representation of Trinidad to the London Honey Show. They made him a lifetime member of the London Honey Show. Actually, I have a quick picture of him, an old picture of him. If we could, I could. I don't know how to do this now. Okay, I could quickly. If you would indulge me, I can quickly. So there you go. So you could see a picture. Can you see the share screen? There you go. So that's Gladstone Solomon in 1994 at the London Honey Show as a steward at the London Honey Show in the United Kingdom. So it's a gentleman from Tobago in the Caribbean. So that's how, and this is the next slide if it changes, and this is a records of Trinidad and Tobago's participation at the London Honey Show. So you could see they've won over 50 some. I think there's a slide that tells you how many awards they've won. They've won over 50 plus awards over the years in their participation at the London Honey Show. So they've done a lot of work. And Gladstone, he didn't win, but he got, I think, a second place, and he still has the honey that he got that second place in the 1990s. I think that's a current picture. So honey chain gets darker with age. All right. And I think he's got a couple of his certificates here. Yeah,
wow.
Gladstone, third prize. He's won third prize at London in 2000. Highly recommended in 1991, commended in 1997. So, you know, this is some of his stuff from the London Honey Show. And he's also a member of a trustee for Bees for Development. Bees for Development is a UK based organization that helps beekeeping organizations across the globe. And he's a trustee of that organization. Wonderful lady, Dr. Brad Bear, she is the head of that organization. So this is just some of the stuff. I think there's a few pictures here from, and I think this is a quick clip from the actual magazine, the Honey Show magazine. And I think it was a whole trip. If you remember BWI back in the day, so BWI were actually moving the honey from Trinidad to England for them. So that's a whole thing in itself. So that's a little bit of the history of the Caribbean in the London Honey Show, and some of the things that have gone on in in and Caribbean. So we have a long history.
Yeah.
And winning the Hender Cup is a big thing, because when Trinidad won the Hender, as according to Gladstone, when Trinidad won the Hender Cup for the first time in 1999, it was a big stink because it was the first time the cup was leaving Europe. So they didn't want to give it to the actual couple, to the couple from Trinidad that won, because special arrangements had to be made in getting the cup insured and all kind of crazy stuff, because it never left Europe before 1999.
This was my point of entry to the conversation, because
yes, man.
On the back of that realization that better quality can win the day.
Yes, I don't have Dr. Jessami's records with me, but Dr. Jessamy came from Grenada thereafter, and she won it 2 or 3 times, and she's won categories as well. So the Caribbean has a lot of potential on the world market, you know. But and I keep on saying this, is that, you know, our leaders sometimes in the Caribbean have failed us in that, you know, we have all this potential, but, you know, where's the laboratories to do the research for us? You know, Trinidad is just now trying to do that, start getting into that research to help the beekeepers across the region. But this is something that should have happened a long time ago. If we're talking about Trinidad winning major competitions in London since 1990 now, and we're now in 2021, and this is now just being done, it's almost 20 years later, my brother. All right, so, you know, we kind of always playing catch up, and I think that, you know, the science is important. And it's important for our people to get into the sciences to create this global network of scientists to help us in any field. If it's cancer research, if it's diabetes, if it's whatever, we need to really be making these linkages and bringing each other forward, instead of, like, you know, one man doing his thing by himself. And the reason why we did this presentation, just to make people understand in the Caribbean that, hey, as Caribbean people, we've already done out and gone there and won big things and come back home, and we're not really bigging each other up, you know. It's like, but them fellas do that quietly, you know. But it's one people, man, one Caribbean. And unless you have that attitude of, well, boy, it's not a solution that did it. Boy, it's not a Grenadian that did it. Boy, it's not a Jamaican that did it, so it don't count. You understand? It's one people, one Caribbean, man.
That's it.
Because and we are that one mind. All right, so so we use this presentation to bring everybody together to say, listen, this was done as one of us. It's not as apart from us. It's one of us. Right? And Dr. Jessamy, her wins and accomplishment in winning the Hender Cup at the same competition is one of us.
That's right.
And this vision should be used for your guys when you're young apiculturists in London, in Manchester, in Liverpool, wherever they are from the West Indian community. Is important because you guys are there. You representing the Afro-Caribbean culture or Pan-African culture in London, in wherever you are. You guys supposed to be represented. It's not for us coming all the way from the Caribbean to represent the cause, man. You're there. You have to represent the cause, and we have to link with you to represent the cause.
Absolutely. Right? Do that. Well, let me ask this.
Guys are the tip of the spear.
Let me ask this then, because I want to keep what we've done as a clear unit in terms of the presentation. And now touched on to the next thing that we talk about. So I'm going to ask you to add in at the beginning, maybe this thing, or somewhere inside of your next presentation, because we talk about the history. And when you talk about the Caribbean, I was going to mention that in my conversation with Professor Kritsky, who is an Egyptologist and beekeeper, he himself mentioned some things about early findings of beekeeping knowledge from Africans brought into the Caribbean via that movement, the enslavement movement. So indigenous knowledge coming into the space along the path of the African mind. So you know, that story that you're going to tell us is necessary. And if you can add, I'm asking you to add what you just touched on into this. So we spoke about the indigenous bees for the region, the introduced bees, and the relationship of this to the African Holocaust, and also in more recent time, our journey to excellence in the beekeeping practice on the international standard. If we can do that in a next presentation, that's a thing in itself. That's fantastic.
What I will probably try to do, I'll try and get Gladstone so we can make it a triple header. Wow. So we can get Gladstone involved in that conversation. You know,
well, that's great. Yes, please.
I'll speak to him and let's try and get Gladstone involved in that. And definitely discuss it, and he can give you firsthand about the Trinidad experience, going to London and all of the trials and tribulations and the interesting things and the many interesting people he's met in his journey as a beekeeper over the years. You know, his years are much more than mine. So, you know, I would love to have him on board.
Structure that so that you know what you want, you know what you can your presentation regarding the history that we spoke about, and you know some of his. If you can structure that so we can have that fluid conversation, it'll be an honor to hear from the elder. Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
definitely.
And then to have that as part of our British Science Week program, that's great. You know, just to make it clear, this is our entry into beekeeping. You know, so it's like,
yeah, man. Well, yeah, come, man, come. I wish the corona wasn't there because I'll come on a flight, but I definitely once I'm in London, I have to go and visit my folks. Once I do come into London, I will definitely be hooking up with you guys.
Well, yes, please.
The last time I was in London, I was begging my mother, come on, put a beehive in the hive, man. You're going to enjoy it. No. So at least now I know when I come to London, one way or the other, I will leave knowing there's at least 2 or 3 or 4 beehives set up and are running, so I can call in and check on you guys and see what's going on. We can have the app. We can have the app running, and I could check on y'all guys and say good vibes. So at least the network, you know, is expanding, and we can definitely do that. And there's, you know, and I have lots of people I know that could, you know, whenever they're in wherever you guys are located, they come and check on y'all and make sure you're on the right direction, man.
It's great. It's a great.
I want to see some of your. I want to see all honey out there, man.
Well, that is, you will see, and it will be a very high premium because the honey product is not the concentrated point of our apiculture. Obviously, it is a product. It's a thing that it has to be part of it. But because it could be even rarer, then
that's right.
We're concentrating on all the things around it, and so
that's right.
Thing, it's fantastic.
You're talking my language now, man. You're talking my language.
I'm inspired by those 3 jars of honey that I just saw. I want some honey that I can put down and say, same thing this time, someone wants to see that honey again. And know
That's right. I want to see you guys enter some honey in the London Honey Show, man. And I want y'all to represent the Afro-Caribbean community in London. That's what I want to see, man. I want to. I mean, we're gonna come as the cavalry to support you. You know, we're coming as a cavalry with our own entries to support you. But I want to see high representation from the Afro-Caribbean or the Pan-African community across the world. You know, flooding the London Honey Show. Say, hey, what happened here, man? Where do these people come from? I said, well, the originals are here, man. The original beekeepers are here, man. The original beekeepers are here to represent, man.
It's great. It's great. We have to win the competition based on this kind of reasoning. We put it on the table. Right. It's on the table.
That's right, man. We want first, second, and third. One, 2, or 3. That's nothing less, man. It's a coordinated effort, man. So we get the brothers from Africa to send in. We get the brothers from the Caribbean to send in, and we got our guys right in the doorstep, man. In the battle, make their submissions.
Giants.
You understand? We must come out with a result. One way or the other, we must get a result. So I'm not afraid, man. I'm not afraid. 2022, we're making it happen.
Okay, it's good. It's
all
great.
Right? So coordinated effort. All right, that's what I want us to say. A coordinated effort. We must come back with we must come back with our medals, our rosette, our certificate, saying that we was there. All right, so that's my challenge to you.
Well, I receive it. Black Open University, level being 9. We're about that. That for me, that's like, this is what our cadets, they need to receive that kind of challenge. And
good.
Anyone who checks the history of what we've just spoken about, they know who you are, they can see the institutions. It's a bona fide thing.
Good.
We've received it. We received the challenge, and it's what we're supposed to do. So
that's good.
That's level being 9. That's exactly.
And you got our support to make it happen.
That's right. That's the whole point. So we'll do it.
There you go.
We'll do it.
Good.
Let it be done.
Good.
Okay. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much. And it's a classic show. I say so myself. Level being 9. You Learn Naturally Radio. Richard, we appreciate you so much, and you're obviously behind you. There's so many other ones. You've touched on a few of them. We appreciate everyone involved in consolidating the practice for the region and for the world. And so I'm looking forward to our next conversation. That will also be a classic. And you get the elder to come on as well. Thank you for that. That idea is brilliant.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, let's do that. We've said so much. I think people will need the time to get ready for the next one. So
good.
So much. And we'll speak again soon. Hashima, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bless. Guidance. Good.
Level being 9. More detail mastery. On our level being 9 mastery program. Level being 9 mastery program. Wow. Mastery program. Level being 9 mastery.
Who can measure the human mind?
Tune into Natural Radio.
All have that's inherited, and we should use it in the best way we can for the future of society and making sure. And we should never underestimate her. It's imperative that we should learn from the lessons of all relatives and human. Never again. 1792, Benjamin Banneker first produces almanac, a stargazer's calendar. Because he went to slave, he had the freedom to discover. He became a surveyor, mathematician and astronomer. First black person with a patent, Thomas Jennings, was in 1821, which shows that the climate was changing. Remember Granville Woods, who had the passion for inventing? He was an electrician, both renowned and wide-ranging. Have you heard of Garrett Morgan? What a prolific inventor, coming to the rescue with this safety through the smoke protector. He even gained a patent for his traffic signal later, even though his success would be hindered by his colour. Now here's another man, he's an enlightening inventor. He modified the light bulb, his name was Lewis Latimer. The skills that he portrayed was well regarded and sought after. Now imagine if a person's race had never been a factor. We all have a that's inherited, and we should use it in the best way we can for the future of and making sure.
Who can measure the human mind?
You Learn Naturally Radio.
You Learn Naturally Radio.
Yes.
Radio.
Could you possibly rewind and come again?
Who can measure the human mind?
To You Learn Naturally Radio.
Now imagine if a person's race had never been a factor. We all have a that's inherited, and we should use it in the best way we can for the future of and making sure. And we should never underestimate her. It's imperative that we should learn from the lessons of all relatives and human. Never again.
YouLearnNaturally.org. YouLearnNaturally.org.
Who can measure the human mind?